Right.
I honestly, hand on heart, I think it was just those two things.
Can you remember what it felt like doing your first cycle, like with the test, and notwithstanding what it was, but can you remember, like, were you looking in the mirror going, whoa, okay, like
So because that was the first time I'd ever gone to that level of body fat, I don't know if it was the drugs or it was my dieting that was causing the way I was looking. So it's hard to say that. The time that I noticed them working is the first off season that I done with them.
Okay.
So that's probably when I noticed, Jesus, like now I'm big.
You're blowing up.
Yeah. So that was the difference between the prep and then using them in off season.
So back to the show. You were walking up the stairs.
Stood on stage, and the pre-judging at NABA was done in the morning, and the finals were done at night. So the pre-judging is maybe about half full. I remember just standing there, and I was like, I fell in love instantly.
Really?
Like, instantly.
Wow.
I still remember that feeling to this day, and ever since then, just addicted to bodybuilding. Just everything about it. I said this to one of my friends the other day, like, it still fascinates me to this day. Every day, it's all I think about. Training, nutrition, anabolics to an extent. I don't go about thinking about anabolics all day. It's a bit weird, but everything, like we talked about, Phil Heath's mindset towards it.
Yeah.
It's the most unbelievably fascinating sport and lifestyle on the planet, in my opinion.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we've got plenty of time to talk about that. That really absolutely is, and we're going to unpack all of it. You know, I'm sure you've seen the Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary.
Yeah, the most recent one, yeah.
I mean, it's fantastic.
There's a lot of stuff there I didn't even realise about him.
Spectacular.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's amazing.
Kind of, I mean, I was going to say it's like a movie, but he is a walking movie. He is the movie. But he, in that documentary, and I'd recommend the listeners watch it, it's on Netflix, talks about going on stage and how it feels and having all the eyes on you and doing his classic poses, and you can see why.
Oh yeah.
Because it must be the ultimate, like, adrenaline rush almost. You're in these tiny pants.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Fake tan. Yeah.
Oiled up, fake tan.
Yeah.
And everyone's looking at you and you're asking to do these poses. So I can see why there's a buzz.
Yeah.
And I mean, must have been easy for him to fall in love with it, particularly when he went to California, because all he did was lie in the sun.
Oh yeah.
Train.
I could totally see how you fall in love with that.
Yeah, right? That's like the ultimate lifestyle.
Yeah.
So you did your first show. How did you get on in your first show?
Came second, and 4 weeks later I'd done another Scottish show, another different federation, and came first in that one, beating the guy who beat me.
Nice.
4 weeks prior. So
why did you beat him that time? Like what?
I was a little bit more conditioned. I think because what happens to the body, if you diet for too long, it starts to fade, starts to look tired. I think that kind of happened to him, whereas I got better after those 4 weeks. So that's just how it kind of played out. So
there's a limit to how long you can diet for, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Because one person who I came up with, he described bodybuilding prep as controlled starvation. Like, eventually, if you keep going, you will die. Like, that's essentially starvation.
Even though you've got lots of muscle.
Yeah, it's controlled starvation. Like, you will eventually strip away that muscle if you diet for enough time.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, so it's controlled starvation. So the body does eventually give up. It does eventually look worse.
Yeah.
Again, we go back to the fascination. It's an art. Dieting for a bodybuilding show isn't just do this cardio, eat that broccoli, take these drugs. That is like maybe the surface. There's an art to standing on stage.
So you have 15 years of experience now in training, but also you've coached a lot of people who've won competitions. And have any of your clients got a pro card?
Yeah, I've got a IFBB pro card through Karen Gibson. She won figure in 2019, British. I've got clients who've got pro cards in other federations as well. So
we could probably talk for days about the art. But can you try and distill the essence of 15 years creating champions and being a champion yourself in terms of the art of a prep?
I've only been prepping people since, as for a living, since 2017. So still a bit of time.
Good experience. But the results show.
Yeah. As a whole, though, it's kind of like, you have everything dialed to a T. Like, the minutes you're sleeping, the grams of salt you're eating, the grams of food you're eating, everything on the anabolic side. Training is beyond meticulous. I think most competitors will tell you this. If you do like a 16-week prep, those last 8 weeks, because you're so dialed in and focused, you don't really remember much of it. You remember the start of that 8 weeks, and then next thing you know, you're at the show. You're just so dialed in and in tune that everything is just clockwork. There's no thought. There's very little thinking involved. From a competitor side of you, a coach side of you, slightly different, but it is monotonous. But yeah, when you're dialed in that much, and that's why a lot of people struggle after they've done the show, because they can't take themselves out of that.
That's interesting.
That mindset. It's you are very much locked in. I've had clients, and myself obviously, where it's a month after the show and you're struggling to kind of get back to normality, just because you've had just this dialed in focus for that amount of time. Obviously, you throw starvation into that equation as well, and it does compound and seems like a lot bigger.
Do you feel depressed after a show? In that sort of interlude period?
So we get what's called the post-show blues. That's very common. So people no longer have this goal anymore.
Right.
So that's why it's quite important to kind of set new goals going forward.
Yep.
So honestly, there will be some people, guys and girls, who will stand off stage, they'll look at their calendar for the next year and they'll already have picked a show the moment they get off stage. Like that night as they're sitting having their cheat meal at night.
Their blowout.
Their blowout, yeah. They'll be sitting there planning their next show.
Not recommended for gut health, but
yeah. Speaking of which, moves us to our next topic. They'll be legit planning their next show. So that's how bodybuilding works and how it should work post show. But depression, maybe not so much depression, but definitely post show blues is definitely a real thing. And
are the principles of the prep the same for everyone, or does it depend on if they're male or female, if they're like newly into it or advanced, if they're on gear or not on gear? Like, how does it change or differ?
So, kind of a blanket statement, I would say females have to do more than men in terms of suffering, less muscle mass, less capability to lose body fat as efficiently.
Right.
So in that aspect, yes, there are some women who do have an easy time of it, and there are some men who really have to suffer to get remotely in shape.
And just for the listener, because remember, this is not it's not a bodybuilding podcast. So when you say in shape, can you try and contextualize it? Because typically, I think the classic listener to Inside Matters would see someone at 15% body fat, 12% body fat, and go, "Oh, that's athletic physique."
Yeah.
They look amazing.
Yeah.
But you're talking about something very different, aren't you?
Talking about single-digit body fat levels, unhealthy body fat levels. You got to remember though, it was only for 10 minutes on stage on maybe 1 or 2 days a year. So it's not healthy, but it's not unhealthy.